Let's talk about the vocabulary trap. First, if you're still in school or you have to take a standardized test like the TOEFL or TOEIC, I'm sorry. In that context, in that bubble, you'll have to learn vocabulary in a very specific way. And that's okay. Well, not really, but we can't change too much about that. For everybody else outside of school trying to learn a language for real, on their own, you need to shake off that student in school frame of reference. When people decide to get serious about their language learning, I've seen them do things like trying to do a daily quota, learn 5 to 10 words every day, hoping that snowballs into more words each week, and then a month. What's the math? That's potentially over 3,000 words in a year. If you can do that, cool. Don't listen to me. Maybe you're driven. Maybe you got the motivation. You have the power. And if so, can I have some of that? Like, just a little bit? For the rest of us, this path of study, despite its good intentions, will most likely kill your motivation and make your path to learning so much harder. It's true that at the very beginning, these kinds of goals might have their place. When you don't know the words for what feels like basic things, it's humiliating. So take time to learn colors, verbs, things you use. Things you use that you want or need to talk about. I'm going to repeat that last line one more time because it's important. Things you use that you want or need to talk about. I remember one time I had a client who was in a self-esteem spiral. After 10 years of living in the US, she couldn't remember the word faucet. A faucet. A faucet is something you use every day, true. But is a faucet something that you talk about very often? No. Not unless it has a problem, right? And even then, you can talk about the problem without ever needing to use the word faucet specifically. Hey, there's something wrong. We need to get this fixed. Call a plumber. Tell them there's a problem with the sink. Then when you're talking about the problem, the plumber will probably be the one to use the word first. Sink? You mean it won't drain or water isn't coming out of the faucet? The main takeaway in that example is not knowing a particular word can make you feel awful about something you don't need to feel awful about. The other important problem to discuss, knowing words and using words are two different abilities and skills. You have a big list in your head, but how good are you at using that big list? And this is probably the trickiest thing about learning in the real world outside a classroom. Even if you hate homework, tests, and stressing over grades, they give you something that's measured. So when you don't know any vocabulary to then knowing 10, 50, or 100 words, it feels good. You went from nothing to something. It feels like something you can track. Knowing how to use a word in a particular situation, you might give yourself a pass or fail on being able to remember that word, just like that faucet example from before. But how much credit do you give yourself for navigating that conversation even when you don't know that vocabulary word? That's the stuff that really matters. But it's also harder to track. It's harder to keep in mind because it does feel like you're coddling yourself. You want to ensure that you're taking steps to learning language for the long haul though? This is the stuff you got to be more mindful of. Keep learning new words, especially if you feel like it's a healthy part of your learning process. All I'm saying is don't treat knowing or not knowing a word as the best representative of your language ability. Don't fall into that vocabulary trap.